Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today's video is going to be a quick review of the AP Top 10. Now I know I did this last week after week 2. I know they put out the top 25, but the only reason that I do the top 10 and only the top 10 is because most people aren't really going to start talking about you until you crack the top 10. If you're the 21st best team in the country, nobody is going to talk about you. People start giving you respect when you crack the top 10. So that's why I only do the top 10. Plus, a lot of years, there's only 25 ranked teams because there has to be 25 ranked teams. There are a lot of years where you struggle to really, truly find 15 good teams. And after that, you just start naming teams. So that's why I do the top 10. But this week, to make it a little more interesting, I'm going to give you the new AP top 10. And then I'm going to give you my top 10 that I would have after week number 3 of the season. So first we'll do the AP top 10, and then we'll do my top 10. Of course, the AP top 10 has Alabama because they haven't lost yet, and they're going to stay number 1 until they lose. Number 2 is Georgia. Number 3 is Oregon. 4, Oklahoma. And rounding out the top 5 is the Iowa Hawkeyes. Number 6 is Penn State after their win over Auburn on Saturday night. Number 7, Texas A&M. Number 8 remains Cincinnati. And then 9 is Clemson. And rounding out the top 10 is the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, before I get to my personal top 10, if I had a top 10 right now, let me say, and if you're a fan of a team, no matter who the team is, then you're going to know the kind of people I'm talking about. But it's not explaining me, because I've said since day one when I started this channel that I'm a Clemson fan. If you cut me, I bleed orange. I'm a Clemson fan through and through. Nothing's ever going to change that. But I'm also a realist. I have no problem calling things like I see it. Most fan bases, you either have the extreme fan on one way or the other. You're just so in love with your team that if anybody says anything bad about your team, you want to fight them. Even if it's true, and you know in your heart it's true, they're speaking bad about your team, and you want to fight them. Can't nobody talk bad about your team. And then every fan base has the opposite side, where you're a fan of a team, but all you do is think negative. They call you Negative Nancy, because if your team wins, instead of being happy about the win, you want to find the 95 bad things. If they win 47-10, they should have scored 70. Nothing is ever good enough. And I'm right smack dab in the middle as a Clemson fan. If Clemson's going to play a game and I think they're going to lose, I have no problem saying I think Clemson's going to lose. It doesn't make me less of a fan. It's just, from what I've seen so far, I think they're going to lose. But at the same time, I'm not so negative that I say, man, we'll be lucky to win 6 games, because that's not realistic. You look at your schedule and you know you're going to win more than 6 games. So you shouldn't be too much on one side, or you shouldn't be too much on the other side. There's nothing wrong with pulling for a team and being realistic. And I have no problem talking to anybody about a game as long as they're realistic. The only time it starts getting on my nerves, and I'll give you a prime example. Some people that I worked with back in about June, when they started talking about the Clemson-Georgia game, and you ask them who's going to win the game, and their first response is, well, Georgia's going to win because they're in the SEC. That is the biggest bunch of malarkey I've ever heard in my life. A team doesn't win a game because they're in a certain conference. A team doesn't lose a game because they're in a certain conference. If you win the game, it's because you were better than the other team. And for some reason, a lot of people just don't comprehend that. You know, Clemson didn't call the office of the SEC and say, well, since y'all play in the SEC, we just going to let y'all beat us. That's not how it goes. So as long as somebody comes to me and they want to talk football logically and give football reasons on why a team's going to win or why a team's going to lose, I'm fine with that. But when you come to me and start saying, well, a certain team's going to win because they're in the SEC, that gets on my nerves because either you're an idiot or it means you don't watch football, so you don't have a real, true, logical reason why a team's going to win, so you just say that to have something to say. That I don't like. And I say all that because I'm fixing to get into my personal top 10. So I wanted to explain myself before I got into my top 10. My top 10 right now, the best team in the country to me is Georgia. Now, of course, that's because they have the win over Clemson, which as of right now still looks like a big victory. But if Clemson don't get things together and they end up going 8-4, then all of a sudden Georgia's win over Clemson doesn't look like a very impressive win. But as of right now, it's still a pretty good win. The second best team in the country to me is Iowa. They beat Indiana week 1. They beat Iowa State week 2. To me, Iowa, second best team in the country. The third best team in the country right now is Alabama, and that's only as of right now. I've already said it, and I'll keep saying it. Alabama is going to lose a couple of games this year. Their defense is just not as good as normal. They have absolutely no running game whatsoever. And outside of Mechie, their wide receiver group ain't near as deep as it normally is. Which leads me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, and that is I've had multiple people that I work with ask me why I bash ESPN all the time or why I refuse to watch ESPN unless they're showing a game. Well, I was reading an article yesterday about somebody from ESPN whose name I won't say because a lot of times they say stupid stuff to get attention, to have their name called. So because of that, I won't say their name. But it was somebody who's very prominent at ESPN was saying that Alabama needs to get concerned because they didn't look very good on Saturday against Florida. But then their next line was, we heard so much about how good their defense was going to be. Well, that's why I stopped watching ESPN. They gave themselves away. You're not supposed to hear how good somebody's defense is. You're supposed to sit and watch film and base it on what you saw, not what you heard. But anyway, number 4 is Oregon. Number 5 is Oklahoma. Number 6, Penn State. Number 7, Texas A&M. And number 8, Cincinnati. So far, 1 through 8, I have the same teams, just a little different order. But here's where it gets a little bit different. The AP poll has 9, Clemson, 10, Ohio State. My top 10, I've got 9, Notre Dame, and 10, Ole Miss. And this is not meant to be a bash a Clemson segment or bash Ohio State segment. I've got plenty of confidence in Dabo Swinney. I still think Clemson will eventually get it turned around, but it may not be this year. But you've won 2 national championships in 5 years. You can't be a top 5 team every single year. If Clemson has a down year and they do go 9-3 or 8-4, it's not going to affect me one way or the other. I've been a Clemson fan since Tommy West was the coach. I've seen years where you look on the schedule and you try to find 6 wins just so you can go to the Humanitarian Bowl. So going 9-3 to me is still not a terrible year, but Clemson's been so dominant lately that if they go 9-3, they're going to have a lot of fans jumping off cliffs. Well, guess what? Everybody has those kinds of years. So Clemson may not get it turned around this year, but even if they don't, they will get back on track eventually. I've seen Dabo do it before. He'll do it again. I don't know what the problem is this year. They've got 5-star talent all over the field, but their offense just can't score. It really is amazing this day and time where football is all about offense, that Clemson's given up no touchdowns in 3 games. That's great, but eventually that streak is going to end. You're not going to play an entire season where you give up no touchdowns. And the first time they give a touchdown up, they probably going to get beat unless they hurry up and find an offense, because you have to score sometime or another. Now, if I do this poll next week or the week after, then Clemson might crack my top 10. But as long as they're winning with 14 points or 17 points, they're not a top 10 team, because you're not going to beat Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Oklahoma, Iowa, Penn State, none of those teams by scoring 14 points. It's not happening. So if their offense gets back on track, I'll put them back in the top 10. Not until then. And Ole Miss is number 10 because there has to be 10 top 10 teams. Florida is not a top 10 team. Ohio State is not a top 10 team because they're the opposite of Clemson. Clemson has no offense. Ohio State is abysmal on defense. They were actually letting Tulsa run up and down the field on them Saturday, and Ohio State finally pulled away in the fourth quarter. Now they're in a pickle because their defensive coordinator is supposed to be Kerry Coombs, which supposedly he's one of the heralded defensive coordinators, but he looks pitiful with Ohio State. But he is supposed to be a tremendous recruiter, and he's the one that's getting all these great recruits to Ohio State. So if he's the problem and you fire him, well, then you lose the guy that's getting you all your great talent. But if you keep him and your defense continues to absolutely suck out loud, well, then all this great talent does you no good because you can't stop anybody. But Saturday, they let, I believe, their secondary coach call defensive plays, but it looked exactly the same. Their defense is just an embarrassment. They're awful. So when your defense is that bad, you just cannot be a top 10 team. Sorry, you can't. So outside of the bottom two, my top 10 basically is the same thing as the regular AP top 10, except for a little bit different order. But then 9 and 10, I've got Notre Dame and Ole Miss instead of Clemson and Ohio State. If you have any thoughts on the top 10, whether it's my top 10 or the AP top 10, please feel free to let me know. But just like the AP top 10, my top 10 will change each week. It's all going to be based on a week-to-week thing. But I try my best not to do what the AP does. The AP poll, a lot of times what they do is they base a team based on how good they were last year. Or they rank you because you've got one great quarterback. Or they rank you up there because you've got name value. I don't do that. I try my best to watch as much football as I can and rank teams based on what I saw that day. Not what I saw last week or last month or last year. None of that matters. What you did last year has no effect at all on what you did yesterday. So I try to base this on what I see on the field every Saturday. And it has nothing to do with last year or last month. It's all based on what I saw yesterday. So from all the games that I saw yesterday, that right now to me is the best top 10 teams in the country. And Matt Corral right now, in my opinion, is the leading candidate for the Heisman Trophy. Not that it matters, but I know a lot of people start talking about it early, so I wanted to go ahead early and say Matt Corral, to me, is the leading candidate for the Heisman Trophy through 3 weeks of the season. Now, coming up later on this week, probably on Thursday, we'll start talking about week 4 of the college football season, and then I'll talk about some of the NFL stuff that happened on Sunday, and of course there's one more game coming up tonight. So let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. What did the carpenter say when he finished building his house? Nailed it. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.